Hi there. Thanks for coming in. Have an amazing presentation. I really enjoyed it. I wanted to start off today by talking a little bit about me. And I do a ridiculously niche job. It's called being a product advisor to pre-series A startups around here in Prague and also in London. And what I mostly teach them is about product discovery and about product growth. So once you come in there as real PMs, then you don't have to deal with them not knowing about things like basic product discovery or why roadmaps are the way they are. So that's basically what I do. But I mostly specialize in doing user research. And I've done quite a lot of user research calls. I've been in several companies which are known for their customer centricity. And in my free time, I love playing squash with some of you guys in the audience, nomading a little bit. And also I coach debate for 10 years. So afterwards, feel free to talk to me about anything of these things other than the subject here. But before I jump into our topic today, which is basically how do we build the things that matter to people, I wanted to ask you, how familiar are you with the concept of continuous product discovery? I love to hear that we have many Teresa Torreses in the room. For those who don't know, Teresa Torres is the person who actually came up with this framework and popularized it in her book called Continuous Discovery Habits. But as I can see, this is great. To be honest, I was really surprised we have so many product managers in the room, because on Friday I got the guest list and there are literally like 20% PMs. And I was like, oh gosh, what do I do? I need to talk about things to so many people, so many different audiences. But this makes it much easier. Thank you for voting. Then I have one more question for you, so don't get your phones out of you so far, yeah? And what do you hope to learn about today? Great. Okay. Amazing. This really helps. So now I know what to focus on. Seems that there's a good, so how to do product discovery. That seems to be the common thread. And also the educational part about it and getting the discovery, we can sort of merge that within one of the topics of today's presentation. So I'll get to it. Thanks so much for voting. And now let's jump into it. Today I want to talk to you about building things that people need through a common framework called continuous discovery and looking at it through the lens of your customer. And I want to start off today by telling you what I would have told you in the very end. Leave an empty chair on every meeting you have. It's not something that your therapist is telling you. It's something I am telling you to figure out what your customers really want. Because on that meeting, you have many people fighting to prove that they are right, that they know what they're doing. And many times we forget about the most basic thing, about thinking about our customers. And today's presentation is all about that. How can we understand our customers better? So I want you to fill the chair with customer voice by talking and listening to your customers, because I presume none of us are mind readers. So that's the only way how we'll get to it, by talking to them, listening to them, and figuring out what do they truly need. So in today's session, I want to talk about three things. First, what product discovery actually is, why we should be doing it. Second, a simple guide on how to get started on product discovery. And since that's something which you are super curious about, I will be spending most of my time there, hopefully. And then I want to tell you about how to advocate for product discovery and talking to your users more often to your organization. So let's start with the first point. And I like Simon Sinek, so I like to start with why. And why should we actually care about something like product discovery and talking to our users? Well, because unfortunately, most of the things people are building is failing. Clayton Christensen did a new research, and he found out 95% of newly built products fail. And you know, why do products fail? When you think about it, we push so much resources into them, and they still fail. So much scarcity goes into them. And because we didn't fully grasp the risks of building those products. And Marty Kagan, basically the founder of modern product management as we know it, wrote in his book Inspired about the 4 big risks that you face as a product CEO. First one is volume risk. Second is usability risk. Third is feasibility risk. And fourth is business viability risk. So as you probably know, when someone builds a product, usually it's pretty usable. Yeah, it might be clunky, but usually product designers get it to the point that it gets you to point A to point B if you are patient enough and if you actually really have the need, right? Usually it's pretty feasible. We have some amazing engineers, not only in this room, but throughout the world, which are able to build things. Business viability, yeah, most recently, a big question, also something which PMs deal with, but mostly PMs are responsible for the volume risk. And that's the part where I want to be focusing on today's speech on, and that's the part where most of the products fail. So how can we minimize the customer adoption risk? And here I start to repeating myself again and again by talking to customers, by assessing their needs, by figuring out what to do. So we don't build something no one wants to use or buy. So what it is actually this product discovery someone has been talking about so far? Well, product discovery is the most easiest way to define it is through looking at it under the lens of product discovery versus product delivery, the delivery lifecycle of the product. So if you think about product delivery, that's basically building the product, the engineering, the QA that comes to it, etc. But everything else, which comes into figuring out what are we building, why are we building it, and what opportunities are we focusing on, that's product discovery. That's what we are talking about today. It's about how can we talk to users so we understand what matters to them the most, and we know what is driving force for them that will bring them some value. And why do we actually do product discovery is so we understand and evaluate how potential solutions will be performing before we actually build them. That's the most expensive part. When you put all the engineering teams, when you say, let's go and let's start building something. But unfortunately, we forget to account for the usability risk way too often. We don't talk to our customers enough, and many of those things fail. And why do they fail? Maybe not because we fail at doing our job sometimes, but because we didn't have enough arguments in figuring out how can we deal with other stakeholders in the room. Why? Because we weren't empowered by unique customer insights that we got from talking with customers. And then you face these dangerous animals that Productboard has written great articles about. You face dangerous animals when we are deciding what to build next, like Hippo, the highest paid person in the room. This person comes in and says, this is what we are building. And you say, well, you're the CEO, I guess you're right. Yeah? So you can push back, but unless you have evidence to prove what you're doing, it's really hard to push against these animals. So protect yourself in the jungle, talk to customers around them. And how can you protect yourself from these animals is by a constant reminder that you actually all want the same things. You all want to arrive to the same outcome. However, you all have different ideas about which outputs will get you there. So instead of asking yourself, we should build this feature to accomplish this goal, you should be asking yourself, how could we accomplish this goal that we have? For instance, like, how can we increase our profits throughout this, right? And I want to talk to you about a brief case study, which is basically a product that we are using today on this presentation. It's a product that I built during my time in Slido, and it's Slido for Google Slides. And we didn't come to the room when we were building it and said, you know what, it's cool to do integrations in 2018. Let's do integrations. Though I'm sure someone figured that out, that that's what we should be doing as well. But the reality was that we were at the time moving from the conference market to meetings, and many meetings had a lot of presentations in them. And we figured out our customers were struggling to integrate Slido with presentations, because the reality of it was that you had to switch from one screen where your presentation was to Slido. And that was not seamless experience at all. Many times it crashed, people didn't know how to switch their screens in between. So we came and understood, wow, so if we want to really move, the outcome was to move to the meetings market further, and by that, basically enlarge on our potential target audience, target market for us. Then the only way we can do that is by making this process much more seamless. So we came, talked to the customers, and figured out the way how they handle their presentations, that they would love to have it embedded directly in their presentation, and that they want to do everything for their computer. And that's exactly what we built. And we built it by looking at the outcome first, not by the output. And yeah, there's a great book on this topic called Continuous Discovery Habits by Teresa Torres. Highly recommend reading it. So what happens if you skip product discovery? And you say to yourself, well, you know, I think we know what we should be building. Well, you will most likely be, as Michael Siebel from Y Combinator says, solution searching for a problem. And my favorite example of this are hoverboards. Super cool, right? They get you from point A to point B, and it's kind of like you're hovering above the ground. But the real use case for it is really just looking cool and being in a YouTube video, I guess. But there isn't really a real use case for it, and many people don't use it. I've never seen a hoverboard for the past 4 years in my life. So you build the solution, but they're still searching for a problem. Don't be the next hoverboard. So now, how can you actually be doing this discovery that I've been talking about at your organization? I will start with a caveat, and that is every organization is really different. But you should think about kickstarting continuous product discovery as something like a new product that you are building. So you shouldn't think about it, today I'm changing the company right now, right? You should go there little by little, figuring out how can I get buy-in into figuring this out. So you should start small, test it out, tweak as you go, and also learn along the way from your own mistakes. But nevertheless, whatever you decide to do, follow the rule of thumb. Talk to users at least once a week with one experiment, single focus. So if you tell yourself that you will right now be looking into, if you're a smaller company, it can be a bit wider, like we never talked to our customers before. Like the only way how we know what we are building is because someone has worked in this industry for quite some time, they're our CEO and they're telling us, then you should probably start talking to your target customers. But if you are a little more advanced, like let's say you're Eva, right? Like she's talking to large enterprise users right now who are having various different roadmaps. And she's trying to figure out how are they doing their roadmaps right now so she can understand better what to look at. So how do you actually do it? I will give you how I do it. And what I figured out is the best way to learn about the user research. So first of all, we should, of course, get someone to the user research call and then ask some unbiased questions. And you should 100% focus on the call. You should keep track of time and respect your interviewee. You should be recording the interaction, then watch it, and taking notes after. So usually, this is the counterintuitive path. The intuitive path is you go to the session, you talk to the user, you write the key takeaway, and then you go home, right? But the way how I would do it, especially if you are starting product discovery, is go for it, record every conversation you have, and then watch it. First time, watch it to write notes, so you have everything what the person has said. And second time, watch it to figure out where did you screw up. Because trust me, like I've done hundreds of these calls, maybe 1,000 by now, and I still screw up quite a lot. Because we are humans, we get thrown into the interaction, we don't necessarily follow the script 100%, so we really need to figure out how can we be doing these things better. And many times you don't have someone else to watch over your back in the call. Many times you are the sole PM on this, or you're the sole PM focusing on this very subject. So be your own coach. Try to rewatch these interactions and go with them. And if you want to empower other people along your organization to better understand your customers, a pro tip is to bring them along on these calls with you. So I usually go on a call with a product designer at least, sometimes even with engineers, and most recently with quite a lot of founders who sit there as quiet participants most of the time. I give them the option to ask a question or two, but generally they are there to sit, listen, and watch what's going on, how to ask these questions, how to understand their customers' needs. And this helps them to build a real, genuine connection with these people by just listening. Because usually these people are doing something else most of the time, right? Engineers are behind the computer doing their stuff so things actually work. Founders are there talking about the way how they see the world, but very rarely they actually, sit down with their customers and walk a mile in their shoe by listening to them. So do your best to also evangelize this throughout the organization. Go with it. But how do I actually ask the right questions on the call, Samo? I am not so sure if I can ask the unbiased questions that you've been telling me about. Well, first of all, my friend, don't fail the mom test. The mom test is a great book. Highly recommend to read it again. And basically it means ask questions that even your mom can't lie about. So if you come to your mom tomorrow and say, hey, I have this great idea that we should build a startup around this, what do you think your mom will say? She'll say, oh, my lovely dear, yes, that sounds amazing. You should absolutely do it. But in reality, if you ask your mom, did you ever have a problem with, getting a cab, right? If you're trying to figure out if Uber makes the most sense, right? She's like, yeah, I actually don't have a problem, right? Like I just call and it works. So instead of asking for hypotheticals, ask them for what they have already done. So don't ask how did they solve this? So don't ask how they solved this problem right now, but ask them about how did they solve it last time. You shouldn't be asking them how would they use your solution. You should be giving them your solution as a prototype so they can figure it out in a real life use case. And most importantly, you shouldn't be asking them for a feedback on your idea, but you should be asking about how are they solving the problem that your idea is supposedly trying to solve. So mostly, don't ask hypothetical questions. Ask about the way how they handled these problems in the past. And most importantly, do it in a way that they can't lie. Like, really. And now your call is done. You've done your user research and you figured out a new unique insight. But right now you have to tell it to the rest of the team to figure out how to move with it next. And my example of how you should do this in a super simple way and how you can kickstart your product discovery journey is to share the call summary in the Slack channel. Share the highlights with it. Not so sure if you can see it, but I guess a little bit. So I really like this example of roadmap because you just heard about it. So I wrote a roadmap mapping here again. So I mentioned that you are researching the roadmap mapping tool, and you ask senior people to quantify how are they actually doing with their roadmaps. And so like I have multiple roadmaps that I do. I present some to senior leadership, to our organization, and to my team. My current workflow, I do it in Excel sheets because guess what? Security reasons. Our CTO is really picky about this. We are a pharma company and we really have to do it like this. And suddenly, hey, that's a great insight. We should probably upgrade our security channels, right? And figure out how can we get the licensing there. I love these insights because these insights are they really come up in B2B interviews. If you're doing B2B interviews, you know. And they're also incredibly cross-functional, right? Like this insight is great for legal. Yeah, so these insights you would be able to post here, and then usually when you post good summaries and highlights here, then a great discussion starts in the comment section. Oh, we thought about this, or I heard about this in our sales call, and then you dig deeper and figure out is it actually something that you want to be solving and looking at, right? Also, this is by no means an exhaustive list of things you should be doing with these customer insights, right? This is just the way how you can kickstart it very small. But use these customer insights when you are doing your product requirements documents, when you are giving a presentation about your target audience. You should always be empowered yourself, your team, and your leadership with these customer insights. You should be the person being accountable for being the voice of the customer. But, how do you advocate for adopting discovery at your organization? This is my favorite reason why we shouldn't do any discovery. It's like, dude, look, I spent 20 plus years in this industry. What do you have to know about this? What user research do you want to do? So you've probably heard the CEO being like, yeah, I'm building this tool that everyone will want. But in reality, they're building a solution for themselves. And that is really sad to see. A lot of resources go to solutions like these. And if you are dealing with a CEO like this, they will most likely not give you much in terms of user research. So I recommend scrubbing for everything what you got. Go for customer calls and go to see and figure out things like, maybe I can go to customer chat and see the conversations, what are they asking about. Even very unconventional, but jump on the sales call and ask your salesperson, can I have 5 minutes before you start speaking to them so I can ask them some questions? Like do everything you can to get to some leads because you, my friend, might be working on something that will never be used by any P1. So really, do your best. But many times, better case, people listen to customers' wants, not their needs. So this is the most misquoted quote in product that I like to use as an example. So Henry Ford said, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. This is the usual response when you ask this, when you say to a CEO, like people don't really know what they want. But in reality, even this obvious problem is not so obvious. Like Ford, when he was doing this, he thought the only reason why people would buy a car is to get faster from point A to point B. But in fact, Ford's own first car, not even first, second, third, fourth, 12 years afterwards, he only then managed to beat a horse, right? So people for 12 years, the company will be bankrupt if he was right, that people are only buying it for being fast. In fact, people were buying it because they wanted to be the innovators. They wanted to try new things because it was more comfortable. I'm not a car expert. I don't really know. But obviously, he failed to achieve the outcome that it was, but got lucky and figured it out anyways. Most products don't get that lucky, though. So be really cautious. And once you think about it, user research isn't the most sexy term you can come to a CEO. It sounds like cost. And we are in a cost-cutting business right now. So what I would say is to you, make user research sexy again. Don't call it user research, call it discovery. That's the new thing on the blog. That's what people like to hear. Don't say, I'm not sure if your feature is the best way to do it. Say, oh, I see what you would want to do with that feature. Let's discover how can we actually use it to do better things together by talking to users. And the next time the salespeople comes to you and says, why aren't we building this because the large account really wants it? You come to and say, yeah, can I talk to this person? I would love to hear what's behind this, right? So really, try your best, figure it out, fingers crossed. Message me if there's still some problems. Happy to help. And to wrap it up, once you have the buy-in, here's the way to keep it. First, be consistent. Do the discovery calls weekly. It's really tough being a product manager. It's definitely more than a full-time job. And we need to keep ourselves accountable first before we keep accountable others. Second, show discovery results constantly. Multiple channels on Slack, bombard people with it, become customer obsessed yourself, and then help others be customer obsessed with you. And then third, be a customer champion internally. Keep the empty chair. So to wrap up, be that person who represents the customer's voice on the chair. Thank you. Great. Ooh, I already have some questions. Amazing. So, what are your favorite places to find potential customers to talk to? What do you offer them in exchange for their time? Ooh, this is a great question. So usually the best way to think about the customers to talk to, if your product is already existing, go to talk to customers who use you the most. Most likely, they will be somehow similar to each other, and they will figure out how can you make the product even better. Those power users, there's the ones that you want to go. If you're on the opposite end of the situation, and you're like, we don't have any customers, then go talk to your target customers. Figure out if they are the people that you really should be building things for. And what do I offer them in exchange? Well, it really depends. Everything from money to free use of the tool to my pretty smile. Yeah. So what to do in case you are building a product that only has a handful of clients. All of them super busy, not having time for calls, and the market is very niche and hard to penetrate. How do do product discovery in such case? Great question. Yeah, right now I actually have a client that does real estate construction. It's literally like 10 customers per country who does some niche things like that. And honestly, the best way to do this, I think, is really to ask them politely and be like, look, could we merge the sales and discovery parts a little bit? Because the argument is, we can do user research because you have to sell them it first. But you should say, no, like I can do customer discovery better so I know what these people actually want to prioritize. And then you can create a sales pitch based on those priorities that they have and sell it to them better. So that's usually the way how I approach it. Not a bulletproof way, unfortunately, but that's the best I have. Yeah, so how to combat account managers protecting their accounts to that extent that they don't allow you to talk to them. Yeah, that's tough, man. What can I say? The best things to do is to educate your account managers and to figuring out they will be out of the job in case you don't do your product discovery well. Because in the long run, that's what will eventually happen. So it's really about making sure that you educate not only your engineers and designers, but the entire organization about the need of product discovery and talking to customers. So you are all customer obsessed. Because then even account managers know this is the only way how we can be successful and get the buy-in of that. Also, sometimes, in some cases, it might be a little justified by the fact that you are always going to that one account manager because he's your friend or because you got into it because they thought they really enjoy this. Make sure to disperse it a little bit, and it's not only with that one person. Yeah. So how do you measure the ROI of product discovery in order to change the approach of product discovery of invested time/money? Tough one. The best way how I can answer this is by constantly showcasing the ROI of various initiatives on it with your leadership. So what do I mean by that? If you run an initiative, you run a customer research session, you get your 20 interviews in, you're showcasing the results of it, showcase how it directly impacts the important stuff, like the roadmap. Showcase then later on, follow up, after these things are implemented and say, hey, look, we changed our roadmap to this. Our retention jumped by 20%. It was because we did this user research and we knew what we were doing, right? Remind people of user research success constantly. It's a constant battle, really. Be there, advocate for it, because again, that's the only way how you'll get to the ROI of things. Sometimes, though, it might happen that the ROI from user research just isn't getting there because things are going very, very good. That's the one example I didn't have time to show you, but I promised. So it's about milkshakes in McDonald's. I will try to be super brief. But McDonald's tried to increase milkshakes in McDonald's in the afternoons because vast majority of milkshake sales happen in the morning. I didn't understand why. So they changed flavors, they changed marketing strategy, they put it on the front of the counter there. Nothing of that changed. Why? Because they figured out that the job to be done, which I was describing before, of the customers who are buying milkshakes in the morning to fill them up on their long drive to work. Because you eat a banana in 3 seconds, but a milkshake that is, American-sized, 700 milliliters, it will last you for that hour drive, right? So they totally misunderstood the customer. And they thought we are doing so well with our initiatives, we don't need to do that research. But once they did do it, they figured out, oh shoot, like this isn't the way to go. We shouldn't have been wasting our resources selling this. We should be looking into some other things instead. So yeah. And how to approach user research when you operate in a niche B2B industry and a number of your prospects are very limited. I think I answered that one already by talking about, how to do it when it's limited, but basically combined sales and discovery calls. It's very, very specific advice. I don't think many user researchers would give you, but that's the realistic way how to probably do it in this very niche B2B markets. But I see a hand.
In organizations where the product discovery notion does not come from the top, let's say from direct management, but rather coming as an initiative from, let's say, a single PM, realistically, what are the odds of that organization actually really at some point turning around to it if there is not strong support in, let's say, ownership?
Yeah, that's a great question. So to reiterate it briefly, it was basically like, what if you are a solo PM in a company where leadership doesn't support product discovery and doesn't believe in it? So what's my way of thinking about it and how did I deal with it in the past? So the best way how to do this is to empower the people that you have influence over to start with. So the best way is to start on your things with your team. So if the leadership isn't listening, engineers would listen. Because guess what? If this is in your organization, engineers built countless of things already for this leadership, which didn't work and they had to throw away. So if they see that there is a meaningful change, and that meaningful change produces ROI, that their features are suddenly being used, they're happy because their work isn't going into waste. Then engineers come knocking on the door of the leadership and you suddenly have a tribe of people telling them, hey, we love this, we need to do more of this. And usually the designers already know this, so they come with you. But in case designers don't believe it and they are more visually focused before, educate the designers as well to root out for you. Does that answer the question? Great, okay. Oh, there are 2 more. Jirka, do I have a hand up? Yes, I do, perfect. So, do you always come into the interview with a hypothesis, or do you sometimes ask about the customer problems in general? What expectations do you set in advance? Agenda, code topic, etc. Great question. So again, really depends in where you are with your product. If you are early on discovering something like if you are totally new product on the market who's trying to figure out things, or you are building and looking for a new target audience, you can literally come there with very little to no hypothesis. You are there to just talk about their problems. And when that happens, I'm there to ask about their goals. I'm there to understand their role first, like what do you actually do in the organization? And 2, like how are you being evaluated? In other words, what do you really care about that you get right in your job? So you can get promoted, get more money, the organization succeed. So in this situation, I focus on these things and then I figure out, well, here is what I do, here's what I'm focused on, but right now I struggle with this, right? And that, what do you struggle with is where we tend to go really deep into things. It's like, okay, so what doesn't work about this? Why is that the case? Okay, why didn't you solve it already, right? So asking about these things really depends. But if you are On the other end of the spectrum, really well-defined product, figuring out things that are more fine-tuned, mostly with prototypes already and already right in the spectrum, then it's very much scripted, and it's a lot more about just tuning things out and getting to the points faster so you get to the events. But in truth, most of the time you really just run with the flow. The hypothesis that you come on with really depends on the spectrum, but generally I wouldn't be too worried if you don't have the hypothesis. But I would be worried if you aren't getting some cool insights after those interviews and you've done several of them. Then you probably know you are not doing something right. So yeah. Yes?
You're probably doing a rotated solution tree. So
Yes.
I was wondering how can be related to the previous topic we had, solution tree and roadmaps. Can they be compatible with each other? How do you do the translation there? And how does it relate to the detail that we should communicate to the rest of the organization?
Great question. So we are talking about a very advanced topic, but I'll try to be super brief about it. And it's like opportunity solution trees developed by Teresa Torres. Basically, the way I'm thinking about it is that you are thinking of opportunities that you have. Then you are trying to figure out what are the avenues, how you can get to it. You start with the outcome, then you have opportunities, and then you have some ideas that you are testing out. And how do you relate it to the previous topic, role mappings? So my answer to it would be like, start with those insights, start with those user problems, figure out what your users actually need, what are they struggling with, and then start drawing the roadmap. And figure out those roadmaps based on those insights. That will be the high level answer. The more detailed answer that you're probably searching for, it's really complicated. It really, really matters to see how do you figure it out in different scales of audiences that you have. But generally, if your roadmap isn't informed by customer insights, something is wrong. And it should start with customer insights, not the other way around. Cool. And last question, any other books on mastering unbiased questions? Oh, or two. Any other books on mastering unbiased questions and doing the interviews practically? Yes. So you have the MUM test, you have the continuous discovery habits. And I would also say there is a lot of great knowledge to be found in different product forums. So I wouldn't say go read books, but also open podcasts of different product people like Lynn Rachitsky, Shreyas Doshi, and try to lean in with those interviews with those product experts who specialize on discovery, because some of them are even better than these books and they are a little bit different for you to listen in. And also, if you have specific questions about the product discovery, join Slack communities, like any Slack community, or it says that SK product community, right? And try to ask those questions there. There is usually some PMs who have done it before and are happy to help you and jump on a call to figure things out. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Thinking fast and slow about cognitive biases. Yes, one up on that. That's great as well. Not product-oriented, but great for your thinking process and making better decisions overall and planning your work. Love that book. And I didn't read that one, the Lean B2B, but I will take a picture. So I will read as well. Cool. Thank you.